Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to continue on with this Swedish series of beers that I've been doing for you over December, and now we're starting to spill into January. This is my very first beer review that you're going to see of 2016, so Happy New Year, because it will air on New Year's Day actually. So for this one we are going to do something a bit special. We're going to visit one of the oldest craft breweries in Sweden, if not the oldest, I'm not sure about that, but we're going to visit Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri, and these guys are from a little town called Nynäshamn, which is just a little bit to the south of Stockholm, maybe about an hour or so away, and this is one of their special beers. This one is the Valsviken Vinterporter. It's a 9.1% Imperial Porter, so this one should be very nice. This was actually one of the small portier beers that I got from Systembolaget. You've heard me talk about these a little bit before. They buy in small batches to Systembolaget in Sweden because we have nationalised beer shops here, but this one is very highly rated, well into the 90s on Rate Beer if I remember rightly, but it was rated about 40 in the style, so this tells me it's going to be a little bit quirky and a little bit different, so quite looking forward to trying this one. And as I say, this is my New Year's Day beer review, so Happy New Year to all of those of you watching. I hope you have a very nice 2016. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual websites are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that I'll do from Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, and there's all the usual social media things down there, the Facebook, the Twitter and the Untappd. Please follow me on those, your support would be much appreciated, and to my Swedish viewers, please do let me know some other Swedish beers and breweries you'd like me to have a look at. The standard of the Swedish beers that I've done so far as part of this series has been awesome, so please do let me know some of the other things you'd like me to review, and I will apologise in advance for any bad Swedish pronunciations. I'm still learning it since I moved here to Lund. But anyway, to tell you about Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri. So this brewery, as I told you, are based in Nynäshamn, which is to the south of Stockholm, and the brewery was founded back in 1997, and as I said, I'm not sure if this is the oldest craft brewery in Sweden, but I'm pretty sure it's one of the oldest craft breweries in Sweden. So the brewery finds its origins in the Haggis Bears Club, which was an organisation started by some friends who liked to go on expeditions around Europe and visit the various different breweries, and the main reason for this was that Sweden was very lacking for a choice of beer. For a very long time, in fact. It's only even really maybe in the last 5 years or so that the Swedish craft beer market has really began to kick off. These guys started in 1997, so they're way before the kind of new wave of Swedish craft beers, if you like. But in 1993 the club decided that they needed a permanent venue, so they took an old warehouse and converted it to a pub and breakfast bar, and this proved to be very, very popular with the locals. But the guys also began to brew after taking a home brewing course in Stockholm in 1994, and apparently in the early 1990s there had been a small brewery in the town that used the name Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri, so the guys decided that they wanted to use this name again. I think the brewery must have folded or something like that, but they say in their website that they used this name again after it was used previously. But they name all of their beers after places on the archipelago because they want the beers to be local, and you will notice that in a lot of the names. Do go and check out the brewery website and it will tell you a little bit about them below. The website's in Swedish, but if you use Chrome you can use the translate function on there. But they had a small brewery that they largely built themselves initially, and in the spring of 1997 they launched their first and now flagship beer, which is the Bedero Bitter Beer, and this was launched at the Harbour Party in Nynäshamn. And a visit from Michael Jackson, who was the beer hunter, he died quite recently, I believe, maybe 2007, 2008, but he visited them in 2000 and he inspired the brewery to continue after giving their beers such high ratings, and they continued to brew despite the long hours and hard work. And in the early stages pretty much everything was done by hand, including the bottling, which, as you'll know, is a very, very time consuming process. But they were rewarded in 2002 with medals at the Stockholm Beer Festival and also a permanent spot in the Systembolaget range. Quite a hard thing to achieve, probably especially back in those days too, before craft beer really kind of became the norm, if you like, in Sweden. But in 2006 the brewery moved to their current premises and they put a lot into renovating this place. They also managed to finally secure an automated bottling machine in 2009, and this meant that the kind of super long hours could finally stop for the brewery and they could get on and focus on the brewing rather than the actual sort of work going into just distributing the beer. And this has led the company to grow very, very strongly, and they've worked quite extensively on increasing the range. I believe in the last 4 or 5 years their range has kind of increased a hell of a lot. So just to list a few of the other beers you can get from these guys, in their regular range they have the Badero Bitter, their flagship beer as I said, Landsort Lager, Indian Viking Pale Ale, Tynholt Chinook, Saltham and Stout, Pikla Pils, Brenscare Brown Ale, and they do have a few seasonal beers. I think there's 4 seasonal beers, and they've also got the smaller bottles which are their bigger AVB beers. Most of them do come in half-litre bottles, but the ones like this, which are the kind of amped up beers, do tend to come in smaller bottles. Their barley wine and things actually come in 250ml bottles, which is quite unusual. But yeah, that's your little bit about the brewery. If you want to learn a bit more about them, do go and check out the brewery website. As I said, it's in Swedish, but if you use Google Translate, it does give you an idea. Swedish is quite a good language for Google Translate. Many aren't, but Swedish is. But this one is a 9.1% Imperial Porter. It tells you on the website it's got 7 different types of malts, but it doesn't actually say what the malts are. Unfortunately, I would like to have known that, but it says here, served between 14 and 16 degrees. I've had it out of the fridge for maybe about half an hour or so, so maybe, hopefully it's up around 10, 12 degrees, just a little bit cooler than we should have. As you can see, it comes in this really quite nice box. There is a seal on the top there, and I just sliced that before I started filming the video. But yeah, very nice looking. You can see it says on the back, gives you a phone number, website, all of this sort of thing. But let's actually get the bottle out and have a look. I've not opened this before I started filming, so we'll get the bottle out here, and it does look pretty nice actually. So as you can see, this is a 25 centilitre bottle as well. I was thinking that it would be a 330, and I'm just going to grab my Swedish coins because I can see the light is going to reflect off this when I leave the bottle there, but you can see quite nicely presented. This beer is reproduced every year, and it does say on the side, it says served between 14 and 16 degrees, brewed at Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri in Sverige. As I said, a little bit to the south of Sweden. It says this beer is best before June 2020, so it would have lasted quite a long time, but I thought this was a good one to sign on to 2016 with. Here you can see the Nynäshamns bottle cap on this, so yeah, let's get it open and we'll get on with the tasting here. 25 centilitre bottle. This is the Valsviken Vinterporter of 2015 from Nynäshamns Bryggeri, or Ångbryggeri, near Stockholm in Sweden, Skål. So, as you can see, you can really smell some of the fruits off that, but you can see a nice smoky opening there as we open this beer up. But let's get it out here. There's not going to be, this is a very, very viscous beer. I'll try and sugar it up a bit and get some more head on it. Maybe that will give us a little bit, yeah, nice little kind of beigey tan head. They're actually quite sort of chocolatey looking. But it looks very, very nice in fact. So you can see very, very dark beer, as you would expect, almost pitch black. I always like to describe my beers in terms of guitar woods, and this one reminds me of sort of ebony rosewood colour. There's a half finger of a frothy beige tan head on there, but that looks very, very nice, and you could see how syrupy the pour was there. Really, really quite attractive looking beer, and it smells really nice too. So let's have a little look at this properly. There's a couple of big bubbles sticking to the side of the glass there, but quite a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head. But this is a huge, huge kind of syrupy beer, this. So let's take a proper look at this. It smells like your kind of typical porter, but this is a really nice one. Has all the elements you would expect. There's a sort of bready underlying there, but you've got a nice, really quite prominent treacle and molasses note in this one. To me it has a good sort of woody, or sort of woody, nutty and leathery infusion. You can really smell that in this beer. There's a nice dark caramel in there, like I was saying, a bit of treacle or molasses, and you can see that. Just look at that. That is such a syrupy beer, one of the most syrupy beers I've seen. It looks very nice. As I say, to focus on the aroma, a nice dark caramel in there, quite toasted as you would expect from a porter beer, but there's some nice dark treacle elements in there, really dark caramel, and there's some sweet chocolate as you would expect again, but the main focus for me is that nice woody, nutty infusion that this beer has. That's really nice, and you can pick out some red fruity esters too. It's actually quite like a candied fruit ester. I always say that these candied fruit esters, they remind me a little bit of the sort of Haribo, the little heart-shaped Haribo sweets. It reminds me of that, and you can smell that in this beer too. Maybe some plums and raisins, but I think it's more of a mild kind of candied fruit ester that comes out of this beer. But as I say, the main focus of the aroma really is that nice kind of woody, nutty infused character. There's maybe a little bit of rye bread in there too, but it's big caramel, slightly toasted, some treacle in there, and some nice chocolate as well. So as I always say with these beers, especially when it comes to things like imperial stouts and porters, you get a beautiful aroma on these, so do spend a bit of time and give them a smell. But let's get stuck into this one. So this is the Valsviken Vinterporter from Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri in Nynäshamn, which is just to the south of Stockholm, about an hour or so away. Very nice looking place, and we're going to try my first beer from these guys. Skål and happy 2016, happy new year. Oh yeah, tell you something, that is a damn good beer. First thing you're going to notice about this is just how smooth it is. I was saying it looked syrupy when I poured it, and you should feel that in the mouth. I only had one sip of it, and what you should always do with these beers, sugar them around your mouth a little bit and just let the whole palate adjust. But this, you can feel it. It is such a syrupy beer. That's really nice. So yeah, you've got some nice dark chocolatey notes from this one. I can feel in the aftertaste just a little bit of a kind of roasted bready malt. Not really even coffee, just a nice roasted bready malt, and that dryness you get from that builds as you start to move into the aftertaste. It's very nice, but there's some sweet chocolate in there. There is a bit of a toasted caramel, maybe molasses as well. The molasses is quite syrupy, or treacle as we would call it in Europe, of course. Molasses is the American term. I want to say there's maybe even a little bit of licorice in there, but that's quite a mild flavour. I do think there is a bit of licorice in there. You can pick up some of the woody and nutty notes in this one, but they're a bit more subtle than they are in the aroma, I would say. But yeah, that's nice. This porter, should say, it's not really in your face with the coffee or with the chocolate or with any particular element of the flavour. It's one that blends together quite well. There's a lot of things going on in this beer. There's a lot of quite subtle flavours there, but it has that quite distinct underpinning and quite light feel as a porter. The mouthfeel on this one is quite syrupy, and as I always say when it comes to stout and porters, many people don't know the kind of fine line you get between these styles. A stout is always a little bit more creamy. The porter is a bit lighter in the mouthfeel, and they can be kind of oily and syrupy too. And this one, you know, most definitely a porter. If you ever need an example of the difference between a porter and a stout, for me, this porter really shows you the proper mouthfeel you should expect from this style. But yeah, the middle of your palate, it's just blanketed with a nice light, almost pale malt character. There's a bit of a sort of brown bread on top of there. I'd be interested to know if it was English malts that they put in this beer. There'll probably be some chocolate malts, maybe some caramels and stuff like that. But there's a good roasted malt character there on top of that. As I say, that comes out a bit more in the aftertaste rather than up front. But I think there's a pale malt base in there. Then you just get the rye bread on top of that. And then, as I say, the darker and more roasted elements come out a bit more in the flavour. There's a sweet chocolate on the middle of the palate too, some toasted caramel coming out as well, but more of a sweet, kind of slightly darker treacle molasses sort of thing going on in this beer. A little bit of a licorice flavour, not like typical Swedish licorice. The Swedes really love this salted licorice candy, and if you try it, for me, it's going to take a hell of a lot to get me to like that candy, but the Swedes absolutely love it. It is not like Swedish licorice at all. It's more like a kind of nice, mild, almost milky licorice flavour you're getting out of this. It blends in with all the flavours, and you can pick out the nutty and woody flavours in this one. That nice infused character, that actually sits there in the aftertaste of the beer with the chocolate and a bit of the dry character there. That just sits in the middle of the palate. But as you go out towards the edge of the tongue or on the back corners, there's a nice earthy, hop flavour there, and as you move further forward, it's really quite smooth, and as you go around the front edge of the tongue, there is, pardon me, just a little bit of dryness there that goes around the front of the palate, and then if you go just behind that, that's where you're getting this oily bubble that brings out some of the fruity flavours in this beer. Yeah, it's quite a candied fruit flavour, this one. Maybe a little bit of figs, maybe there is some raisins or plums. I always find raisins and plums are a bit sharper. This is more of a kind of smoother, slightly lighter red fruity ester in this one. For me, it's more of a candied fruit ester, I would say. As I mentioned before, like the kind of red fruit, these little Haribo sweets, it reminds me of that. But very nice. As I said, this beer is more about how the flavours blend together. There's a lot going on in this one. It's not too punchy with the chocolate or the coffee or the roasted malts rather, or anything like that. This is a nice blended beer, and it really does highlight the difference in for me, it really highlights the difference between the likes of the Imperial Stout with their big creamy mouthfeels and the Porters with their nice oily mouthfeels. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this guy, this is mid-bodied. The carbonation does have a little tiny bit of a prickle to it, but it smooths out a hell of a lot. It's a big syrupy beer, this one. As I said, there's a nice malty sweetness there, just a little bit of dryness in the middle of the palate as you go into the aftertaste. But there's a nice chocolatey and caramel sweetness in there with that bready character, the roasted kind of well-fired bread flavour that's in there. That comes out a bit more in the aftertaste. The hops are very, very smooth as well, and there is just a little bit of fruity character, but it's not so juicy. It's more of a mild kind of aftertaste you get into this beer. The fruits are very, very mild in this one, but just pay attention to that little bit behind the front curve of your tongue and you will get them there. This is a really nice beer actually. As I said, the cool thing about this one is it really highlights the difference in the styles, and at 9.1% it actually doesn't have a hell of a lot of alcohol warmth to it, which is quite surprising. They've done that very, very well with this beer. So, I really couldn't recommend this enough. It's really nice. A more subtle Imperial Porter for me, but it blends together really quite well. And the nice woody and sort of woody and nutty and almost leathery flavours that this beer has is really, really quite interesting. So, I would recommend that you give it a go. How likely you are to find this outside of Sweden, I'm really not sure, so do let me know where you're trying this beer as well. Maybe you can get it in Norway and Denmark and things like that. That would be quite interesting to know. But it's been really cool to try one of the kind of special beers from one of the oldest craft breweries in Sweden. So do go and check them out. This is Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri from Nynäshamn to the south of Stockholm, and this was their Valsviken Vinterporter 2015. So this should be a very nice beer for you to try. So as always, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Do go and check this out if you enjoy your Imperial Porters. It's been a really cool one to sign on to 2016 with. There's still a few more beers to come in this Swedish series, so do stay tuned for those. A few more breweries to visit. But I hope you've enjoyed the series so far. Happy 2016, Happy New Year, and hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the beer reviews over 2016. So I'll catch you soon with my next one. Do go and check out the website for the brewery and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Nordic beer reviews, and do let me know some other Swedish beers you'd like me to try. Slange just now, and I will catch you soon. Cheers.